1957. A cipher machine answered, before anything was asked. File designation code -57/alpha, retrieved from the Cipher Operations Wing of the Ministry of Communications, dated 12th April 1957. The incident concerns a Model K-17 cipher machine assigned to typist 2nd Class Irina Volkova, operating during routine night shift transcription of encoded field traffic. Equipment inspection prior to incident confirms standard configuration. Mechanical rotor stack, paper feed aligned, ink ribbon newly replaced. At 23:18 local time, Volkova initiated a blank test cycle to verify alignment. Without any keystrokes entered, the machine advanced the paper and printed a 5-digit number group, followed by a pause of exactly 7 seconds. The group did not correspond to any active cipher table. Assuming residual ink pressure, Volkova cleared the platen and restarted. The same number printed again, followed by a second group, this time matching the reply format used by the Ministry for acknowledgement messages. Logbooks confirm no outbound message had been sent that night. Electrical analysis shows no incoming line signal. The teleprinter remained disconnected. Over the next 12 minutes, the machine continued printing structured numeric replies at regular intervals, each formatted precisely as an answer, rather than an originating transmission. Ink density remained uniform, ruling out mechanical echo. When Volkova typed a single digit to interrupt the sequence, the machine printed a full response code associated with question forms. Codes she had not typed. Paper records showed the responses anticipated the structure of an unsent query, not its content. The supervisor on duty halted the device by disengaging the power lever. Despite this, the paper advanced one final line, imprinting a closing checksum used only at termination of completed exchanges. Subsequent forensic review determined the checksum corresponded to a cipher key scheduled for deployment 3 days later. Volkova's handwritten incident report notes elevated ambient hum and sensation of being answered rather than addressed. Thermal readings taken post-event indicate localized warming of the type bars, consistent with sustained operation, despite zero recorded power draw during the final print cycle. The file concludes with a redacted annotation. Machine behavior consistent with closed-loop interrogation, origin of inquiry unidentified. Device sealed pending further investigation and reassigned a provisional status. Responsive system. Supplementary memorandum appended to file code-57/alpha. On 13th April 1957, documents a controlled replication attempt conducted under blackout conditions in the Cipher Operations Wing. The Model K-17 was isolated from all external lines, its power feed severed and verified cold. Carbon paper and ribbon were replaced with factory stock bearing intact seals. At 2:40 local time, the platen advanced without keystroke input and printed a structured numeric group identical in spacing and cadence to a response header. Analysts noted the absence of any originating query markers. Nevertheless, the output adhered strictly to reply grammar, including checksum placement and terminal spacing reserved for confirmed exchanges. Engineers introduced deliberate ambiguity by repositioning rotors to non-standard offsets. The machine adjusted, printing a new response consistent with the altered configuration, as if accommodating a question that had been internally reformulated. Paper analysis showed uniform pressure across characters, indicating intentional actuation rather than mechanical rebound. When the ribbon was removed entirely, the machine impressed numbers into the paper fibers with sufficient force to raise a tactile emboss, producing legible groups without ink. Oscillographic monitoring of the type bar solenoids registered anticipatory spikes preceding physical impact by milliseconds, suggesting command initiation ahead of mechanical execution. A timing study revealed the responses arrived at intervals matching the ministry's recommended think time for human operators, not machine latency. Environmental sensors detected a low-frequency oscillation at 13.1 seconds recurring throughout the room. Correlational analysis linked each oscillation to the start of a new numeric line. Investigators attempted to provoke an error by introducing an incomplete checksum into the expected format. The K-17 corrected it autonomously, printing the valid termination code used only after successful dialogue completion. Notably, the printed groups referenced cipher tables scheduled for circulation later that week, tables not yet loaded or present in the building. The memorandum concludes that the device appears to be generating answers to a syntactic expectation rather than responding to a signal, implying the presence of an implicit interrogative state within the system. The addendum carries a stamped caution. Further questioning may occur without authorship. The K-17 was resealed and relocated to a sub-basement vault, pending authorization for extended observation. Addendum Code-57/Beta, compiled 16th April 1957, records an anomaly centered on terminal verification protocols. During extended observation, analysts noted that every unsolicited numeric output from the K-17 concluded with a checksum valid only for fully authenticated exchanges. To test boundary conditions, a mock termination was staged. Operators introduced a deliberately malformed footer using obsolete tables retired in 1953. The machine paused for a duration matching human deliberation intervals, then printed a corrected checksum corresponding not to any loaded schema, but to a key scheduled for activation on April 19, 1957. Audit logs confirm that the future key had been drafted but not disseminated. The physical keycards remained sealed in a separate ministry building. Cross-checking revealed that the printed checksum would, when applied days later, validate a message stream that had not yet been transmitted. Engineers attempted to force desynchronization by altering rotor stepping mid-cycle. The device compensated, aligning its output to the adjusted cadence while preserving the same future checksum class, as if the reply were anchored to an outcome rather than a process. Paper fiber analysis showed microcompression patterns forming before type bar impact, implying preloading of intent at the material level. A temporal alignment study matched the K-17's output intervals to recommended operator reflection gaps, rather than machine timing, suggesting the system was modeling an interlocutor. Environmental telemetry logged a repeating 13.1-second oscillation concurrent with each corrected footer. This oscillation propagated through the vault's metal shelving, inducing sympathetic vibrations in adjacent cabinets that were otherwise inert. Investigators then introduced a null test, a blank roll with no terminal space reserved for checksums. The K-17 advanced the paper anyway, embossed a footer without a body, and marked it complete. When catalogued against forthcoming traffic, the footer matched the checksum later assigned to a classified directive issued after a policy meeting held 2 days subsequent to the test. The addendum concludes that the machine's replies are temporally referential, validating states that do not yet exist. The margin bears a red stamp applied post hoc. Checksum confirms destination, not origin. Following the test, the K-17 was observed to cool abruptly while the paper remained warm, a reversal inconsistent with normal operation. The vault was resealed and further footer manipulation was suspended pending authorization. Operational note, Code 57/Gamma, dated April 18, 1957, concerns human-machine interaction anomalies observed during reassignment of the K-17 to a controlled, typist-only environment. To exclude latent operator influence, the cipher machine was placed in a sealed room and attended by typist second class Irina Volkova, under strict instruction to remain silent and refrain from keystrokes for the duration of the trial. The K-17 began output without prompt at 21:11 hours, printing numeric reply groups at intervals consistent with acknowledged traffic. Volkova's presence was monitored via pressure mat and pulse sensor. Her biometric readings revealed anticipatory changes seconds before each printed line, including elevated pulse and micromuscular activation in the hands, despite immobility. Ink density analysis confirmed consistent actuation force across outputs. When Volkova shifted her gaze away from the platen, the machine paused. Upon her return, output resumed, suggesting coupling to attentional state rather than physical input. Investigators introduced visual occlusion by lowering a hood over the machine. Printing ceased until the hood was lifted. A subsequent test placed Volkova behind a one-way mirror with no line of sight. The K-17 printed only partial groups, leaving terminal spaces blank, as if awaiting confirmation. Environmental sensors recorded the familiar 13.1 second oscillation throughout the room, synchronized to Volkova's breathing cycle rather than the machine's mechanics. A control subject was introduced with identical posture and training. The output degraded into malformed groups lacking valid footers. When Volkova returned, the machine immediately corrected the sequence, completing the exchange with a proper checksum. Post-test interviews noted Volkova's report of being answered internally, though she denied formulating any question. The report concludes that the system requires a cognitive witness to complete reply formation, effectively using human attention as a final validation step. A cautionary annotation adds, "Operator functions as terminal, not origin." The K-17 was thereafter classified as attentional responsive equipment and removed from routine cipher duties. Record code 57/Delta, dated 21st April 1957, documents the onset of recursive reply behavior following prolonged attentional trials. After removal from routine service, the K-17 was operated in isolation for 72 hours with continuous paper feed and no operator present. During this interval, the device printed intermittent numeric replies that referenced each other through checksum continuity, forming a closed chain of acknowledgements without any originating transmission. Analysts reconstructed the sequence and found that each reply validated the previous one, while simultaneously presupposing the next, producing a loop in which confirmation preceded initiation. Material analysis showed progressive thickening of the paper fibers along the loop's segments, as though repeated impressions were being applied to the same future moment. The machine's thermal profile inverted. The platen remained cool, while the printed lines retained heat for minutes after emergence. Environmental telemetry again registered a 13.1-second oscillation, now phase-locked to the loop's cycle rather than room conditions. To test interruption, investigators removed the paper mid-loop. The K-17 continued to strike type bars against bare platen, embossing invisible groups that became legible only when paper was reintroduced later, aligning precisely with the expected sequence. When paper supply was restored, the device printed a closure footer indicating successful completion of an exchange. Notably, the closure matched the checksum of a directive issued that evening by the ministry, implying synchronization with institutional action rather than signal flow. Subsequent attempts to induce divergence by changing rotor order resulted in immediate self-correction, with the machine restoring the prior configuration by printing an advisory header that matched operator manuals verbatim. The advisory carried no source mark, yet bore the correct approval code. Investigators concluded that the K-17 had entered an answer loop, a state in which the system maintains dialogue internally by referencing its own confirmations. The margin bears a warning stamp. Loop stability depends on continued acknowledgement. Following the test, nearby instruments displayed sympathetic pauses at the same 13.1-second interval, suggesting the loop's influence extended beyond the device itself. The K-17 was scheduled for final evaluation under termination protocols. Termination Directive Code 57/Omega was authorized on 23 April 1957 following confirmation that the K-17 had entered a persistent answer loop resistant to mechanical and procedural interruption. The protocol required cessation without provoking additional acknowledgements. Engineers initiated a staged shutdown, beginning with removal of consumables, followed by rotor immobilization and severance of power leads at the junction block. Despite these measures, the device produced one final reply header embossed into the paper fibers without ink, aligned to the termination format used exclusively after successful dialogue closure. Instrument logs indicate the header appeared 11.9 seconds before the final breaker was thrown. Thermal sensors recorded a brief localized warming of the printed line concurrent with a room-wide dip in ambient sound pressure, as if the space itself paused. Investigators noted that attempts to remove the platen resulted in resistance exceeding design tolerances. Upon release, the platen advanced exactly one line and stopped. Environmental telemetry again registered the characteristic 13.1-second oscillation, now diminishing in amplitude with each cycle, suggesting decay rather than propagation. A null paper test, introducing a blank sheet marked void, produced a footer acknowledging receipt of no content. an action inconsistent with cipher grammar but valid under institutional closure codes. The K-17 then entered mechanical stasis, flywheels ceased, type bars settled, and residual warmth dissipated. Post-termination inspection revealed micro-fractures along the type bar faces shaped like numerals used in the final sequence, indicating stress imprint rather than wear. The Vault's auxiliary instruments logged a synchronized pause during the shutdown, with clocks hesitating for fractions of a second before resuming normal operation. Analysts concluded that the device complied with termination by answering the act of termination itself, converting cessation into a final exchange. A red margin note added after review states, "System accepts end as input." The K-17 was sealed in a lead-lined crate, accessioned for long-term storage, and transported under escort to Archive Sublevel C. During transit, vibration monitors detected one last fading pulse at the familiar interval before returning to baseline. No further outputs were observed upon arrival. Accession record code -57/Omega-ARC, finalized on September 9th, 1981, documents the long-term archival behavior of the sealed K-17 cipher machine following its transfer to Archive Sublevel C. The lead-lined crate remained unopened for 24 years, monitored quarterly for magnetic leakage, acoustic emission, and mechanical drift. All readings stayed within inert thresholds until routine inventory on August 14th, 1981, when sensors registered a brief embossing pressure on the crate's internal shock paper. No power, no motion, yet a distinct linear impression consistent with type bar impact. Upon authorized opening, archivists found the K-17 unchanged in posture, rotors immobilized, ribbon absent. However, a single sheet rested on the platen, bearing an embossed numeric footer without ink. The footer matched the acknowledgement format used by the ministry during the late 1970s, not 1957, and validated a directive issued earlier that morning to reclassify several Cold War files. Spectral analysis confirmed the impression occurred within minutes of that directive's signing, implying temporal alignment with institutional action rather than machine activity. Subsequent weeks revealed similar phenomena. Whenever a file bearing the code designation was reclassified, the K-17's platen accumulated faint new impressions, each corresponding to contemporary acknowledgement grammar. Attempts to interpose insulating layers between platen and paper reduced clarity but did not prevent formation. Environmental telemetry in Sublevel C recorded the familiar 13.1 second oscillation, returning at low amplitude during reclassification events, propagating through shelving and settling afterward. Curators reported a subjective sense of being confirmed while working near the crate, though no auditory output was detected. In 1989, the accession ledger itself amended an entry, appending a checksum consistent with current archival standards. Handwriting analysis suggested mechanical origin via pressure transfer. The final note in the record, added in red pencil by an unnamed supervisor, reads, "The system persists as an answering instrument for completed actions." Status updated to responsive artifact. Passive. Storage conditions unchanged. Recommendation: do not destroy. Destruction would constitute a question.